Hello and welcome. Thank you for tuning into the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Darkness Radio. I'm your host, Dave Schrader. That guy over there is Tim Dennis. Happy Thanksgiving, Tim.
Well, happy Thanksgiving to you.
And a very special happy Thanksgiving to all of you, our amazing audience spread out around the world. I know this has been a year that has been trying. It has been a year that has been challenging for all. And it may be a year that's hard to be thankful for a lot of things. But for those of us that are here, we're thankful that you're here with us. We're thankful that you're tuning in and thankful for your health and your life. So thank you for making us a part of your world as well. We appreciate it. It is great to catch up with you on this amazing day where we're all coming together, right? It's kind of a homecoming, Tim, if you would, where we're all coming together, pooling together. Maybe you've just eaten a nice heavy meal. Football is not your thing, or you've already watched football and now you want to just relax and settle in for the night. You let that tryptophan kick in as we talk about the strange and the supernatural, the wondrous and awesome world that we are a part of. So thank you. Whatever reason brings you to us on this day, we appreciate it, and thank you for being here with us. We've got an interesting guest to talk with. He has a brand new book. It's called Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. We have a link to his book in today's program guide. So all the information is there. You can visit his website and visit and get his book as well. So we've got all that information made available for you. But we're also going to talk with our guest regarding an alien abduction. And this is something that I really find fascinating, Tim. You know, through 15 years of doing the show, we've had a chance to talk to people who have had spouses and children abducted, themselves abducted, believe that they've been part of governmental conspiracy cover-ups and so on. And everybody seems to have kind of a different aspect or take and takeaway from these experiences. Some are horrified. Some are excited. Some, like Whitley Strieber, start off terrified and now become, I don't know, what's the right word for Whitley? He's just become accepted of all of these strange phenomena and the visitors that come to see him, and he almost embraces them, it seems, after all of these years.
He has, but for a while there, he was almost bordering on anger before he turned to acceptance. I mean, there was anger there. I mean, real anger there for a while.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I said he's been an enigma for us. I know one of the first times we had him on the show, well after he'd written the book Communion and had this experience, even in that interview, his volatility and emotional well-being seemed to swing back and forth. He'd be very conversational and then get very upset. And I believe he yelled out a few times, they raped me, and was very upset about it. And then when we visited with him, even I think it was like a year ago, he's much more complacent about it, doesn't look at it through that same glass that he once looked at. Right. And I'd like to talk to our guest about that. What does he think that means, that he was so horrified by this experience at one point and is now so complacent to it now, or accepting of the entire scenario, especially something that seems so violating with an abduction and the things that Whitley claimed happened to him. It's a strange story. Joining us today on the show, Keith Anthony Blanchard is with us. He is the founder and host of Center of Light Radio, whose listening audience now reaches over 5 million people. He is the author of several books, including the best-selling The Divine Principle, Anchoring Heaven on Earth, and For the Love of God, A Spiritual Journey. And as a spiritual teacher, he is remarkable in his naturally sincere love and acceptance of all people, which is palpable to those who connect with him. Keith lives in Memphis, Tennessee. Happy Thanksgiving, Keith. Thank you for spending this holiday with us.
Thank you, Dave and Tim. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. And what a strange and fascinating topic to talk about. Now, how far back does your story go where it comes to alien abduction?
8 or 9 years old. For my situation, I was never abducted. I was never violated. I would call it like an extraterrestrial cooperation. At 8 or 9 years old, I lived in South Louisiana. We had a big black backyard. It was dark at night, very dark. And at that age, I was raised Catholic. I had fear of big dogs. So I had all this mind stuff moving around. I would never, at 2 or 3 in the morning, willingly just go outside. I just wouldn't do it. And I would find myself often, there was really no intervals. It wasn't like a pattern. It would just happen. Often find myself in this pitch black backyard, simply asking myself, what am I doing standing outside? And when I came into that first state of consciousness, the very first time that I recall it happened, because I don't remember.
Wait, if we could, just for clarification.
Sure.
I want to just understand this. You'd say you'd find yourself standing there, right? So does that mean that you went to bed that night and you'd wake up and you'd be standing in the backyard? Or does that mean that even though it was against every fiber of your being to want to hang out in your backyard, you'd still find yourself wandering out there and hanging out? Which aspect are we talking about?
I would go to bed at night and I would just come to a state of being awake in my backyard. And strangely, when I was in the backyard, which I would never do willingly, I never had any fear. I didn't feel like something pressed itself upon me and violated my free will or violated my body. That was never my situation. I was always just somewhat dumbfounded. What am I doing outside in the backyard? So the very first experience that I recall, I'm a very small guy in stature. And the window was quite up, and I was looking around the house for something to stand on so I can do that, to lunge myself through the bedroom so I can go back to bed. And this began to happen periodically. Now, many years go by. I'd say it happened for about 2.5 years. And I had no recollection. I just knew this event was taking place. And I never felt estranged by it. I never felt to tell my parents nothing was amiss. So strangely, it somewhat seemed normal. So many years passed by. I'm 33 years old. And I started my spiritual awakening conscious walk, if you will. And I'm watching a program on the Discovery Channel. This was like 1993. Program on the Discovery Channel. And it was about extraterrestrials and visitations and all this stuff. And I had a full conscious recall. And so as time began to progress, it began to crossfade into being extraterrestrial, into a celestial type of experience. And now they're both there present with me. But this has been with me for a long, long time. It has slacked off tremendously, but I still get visits. There's some sort of integration that happened throughout all these years to where I can dabble in these arenas simply by wanting it when I go to sleep, just to be conscious of said experiences.
What was that comment you said, Keith? It was what type of experience and then turned celestial?
Well, if we could see these events that we were speaking about early in my life from an extraterrestrial point of view, over the course of my life, I would say, again, about the age of 33, when I had that conscious recall of the extraterrestrials, that's when the celestials began to appear in my life. Satya Sai Baba started coming to me in dreams. I went to India because he invited me. Someone gave me a free first-class round-trip ticket. So there was a long period between the ages of 33 to about 45, 47 years old when everything started to turn into a deeper fashion from, let's use this word, superficial layer of being in contact with people to being in contact with that which is beyond people, that which is energy bodies, light bodies, higher levels of consciousness.
Well, let's go back to that moment you're watching the Discovery Channel. At this point, do you really have a belief or a fascination with extraterrestrial concepts and the fact that maybe we're being visited?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's one of my loves for sure.
All right, so it was before that moment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've always dug the subject, and I delved into it a little early in my life. I love the ideas of talking about it with friends and just mind-expanding stuff. And, yeah, I really love the possibility of everything being available.
But yet, during all these conversations and research and other aspects, it never came back to you, those memories.
No, it did not. No, I was raised Catholic, so I did have some hang-ups about, sure. I love the idea of poking around and new ideas, be it extraterrestrial or even, go and look around the corner. I mean, but there was always this Catholic dogmatic stuff in my mind that made me afraid of the dogs or the boogeyman in the backyard and so forth. And so it took me to somewhat start to wake up spiritually to okay my way through some of my anxieties about it all.
What was it specifically about this episode that triggered this full recall for you?
I actually, it's been so long, I can't really answer that. I just know that it stimulated me in such a way. It was literally like someone putting their finger on the inner button and just depressing it and saying, the light is on. And when these things begin to come back to me, I realized that at that phase of my life was sort of an initiation, if you will, that these beings, if you will, they came to me to manipulate, work on my energetic system so that I can be open at this period of my life to do the spiritual work that I'm able to do. And that's why the celestials begin to come, like Satya Sai Baba, Swamiji Visvayogi, a God-realized man from India who I'm able to be around a couple of times a year, who I'm now, I would call a disciple of. So being around these beings, something else begins to happen.
When you have this recall, what are the first memories that start to echo? What are the first concepts that start to flesh out in your head of what has happened to you?
If you can imagine a movie that's sped up, or just completely sped up at 10 times the speed, it was just truly this flashback, almost as if someone would describe an afterlife review kind of thing. It all just came in this flooding moment. Again, one of the resounding things is I was still never afraid. It was like, oh my God, this happened. Was I violated? None of that existed for me. I just saw this unfoldment, this agreement, this shake hands deal with these others. Now, these others that I had this memory about all those years ago, they look like we would think they would, which is in the mainstream, but not always. I was really never into, let me look really hard. Let me squint. So
wait a minute. When you say you looked at them and they looked like you would think, what does that mean? Like Vulcans, Mr. Spock, or like E.T., or the Close Encounters Greys?
It would more lean into the gray idea. But then again, This could have been something my mind was painting because it only had a limited file resource to say, you were dealing with energy, so let's put this face on it. But it would look more like the gray beings in nature. But I've also seen some that look a little different. But overall, they're really not so different than us. I do know that some of the experiences I've had, that the further we get away from what we call our local life space, even this galaxy, and even deeper, then the strangeness really begins to happen. Beings on levels we cannot even imagine that could possibly exist, and be conscious.
Let's, if I could ask, you have this full total recall at age, what'd you say, 33?
33.
Once you have this profound of a moment, Keith, what do you do? I mean, do you turn off the TV and sit there, or do you jump up and call the wife, honey, you need to hear this? What is that moment and process like for somebody that, like myself and Tim, as far as we know, have never had that experience?
It's exciting. It's nerving. It's scary. It's expanding. But again, when I say scary, my fear wasn't an active fear. It's walking into the unknown, and you absolutely know from soul to bones there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it because you've integrated this. It's going to be with you from now until forever. So I had to do the spiritual work required for me to ever make sense of what is sense. Well, at least to that point in my life, which was senseless. I had no idea. This was just something that was waiting to pop open like a shaken Coke bottle. Finally the cap came off. You flood with all kinds of things that we can't even find words to describe, because how do you find balance in a moment that just knocked you off balance in a very big way?
Was there ever a sense of fear once that realization happened of, oh my God, what happened to me? What was that like?
There was an oh crap moment, that's for sure. Oh crap. But it wasn't an active fear. It wasn't something that consumed me and biting my nails and just being afraid. But I did have quite a few moments in the expansion of my life story to where I was slammed with otherworldly stuff in such a big way. I had to literally sit down and compose myself and put my face in my hand and say, take a breath and kind of allow it to do its number on me, so to speak. So I went and put up this resistance. Somehow inside of me, I know that resistance doesn't really serve the event that may be transpiring. And so I've learned to fall into the experience and allow it to be, and I find my real self in that. That seems to give me balance to deal with anything.
Okay. And please understand, I'm trying to figure out the right way to pose these questions so that we get a better understanding as listeners to your tale. Now, you said that you never felt that you were taken beyond your will or violated in any way, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Are these beings, we ascribe the title aliens to them because of the look and what we're used to. Are these beings truly off-world beings? Are they from another planet, another universe, another galaxy? I mean, what can you explain to us about what these beings truly are?
Yes, and yes. They're on planet. They're also otherworldly. And when we say otherworldly, we automatically want to assume this means a rock that is fixed in an orbit, spinning, and then it's rotating around its own solar system. That is otherworldly, but otherworldly can be that which is beyond this reality we know as a tangible. People are always scientists are looking for life on other planets, and they're not seeing the shopping malls and the cars or the conveyances, but they fail to realize that it's life itself that spins the planet itself and the galaxy and so forth. But they're everywhere. I mean, it's our ancestry, actually. I mean, we are part of a phenomenal experience, especially in this phenomenal 2020 time. We are the rock stars. The entire universal gazes on us about what we do. But they are our ancestors. We come from RNA and DNA manipulation, if you will, all for the unfoldment for literally this time we're living in, which is the greatest experience, not only to be human, but to be human in this moment.
Are there, and the reason I was trying to look for kind of that understanding of who these beings are, wondering if they are cohabitating our planet, but in a different visual plane, almost like pages in the book, right? That
Absolutely.
Each layer is visible to that layer's existence. And is there an alien civilization on this planet? Not like you're an alien and I'm a Schrader and we bump into each other and I don't know you're an alien, but I mean as if there's like multiple layers to our
parallel.
Yeah, a parallel or multi-layered universe effect on our planet.
I would say so. I would say it's a shake hands deal. Energy does not end. I mean, we call things boundaries and so forth and so on, but that's the mind. And when we get out of the mind, then we begin to see this overlapping of consciousnesses. And I do believe that we are being influenced. And when I say influence, I don't mean impinged upon in any way. Well, we have that as well. Welcome to planet Earth. But we have a greater aspect of ourselves, which is a beautiful idea that I think not only humanity, but those extraterrestrials share as well. And I think it's in that spot, in that gap right there is where at least I have often visited in my extraterrestrial celestial experiences. But my answer would be, yeah, there is a parallel world where they can see us for sure.
Are these, and are you comfortable with the term alien or beings, celestials? What is the right term I should refer to these visitors as?
I'm okay with either. But if I was to do a talk, I would use the word celestial or others. But, you know, just like I don't use the word psychic. It's just been so bastardized kind of thing. All
right. So these celestial beings, the ones you've come into contact, you believe are friendly.
Oh, absolutely.
Now you're familiar with Stockholm Syndrome, where you start to sympathize with your captors. Could it be that after years of being assimilated into what they're doing, you've just become complacent or accepting of it because it's easier to deal with than to believe you're being taken off world or taken by these beings?
That's a fantastic question. A very well-deserved question, actually. For me, I use the barometer of joy and bliss and clarity and the fruits of my labor and I look out and about. I shuffle about just like everyone, obviously, and I feel those feelings. But I've never found myself in a manipulative situation. My journey to India, being in the presence of this divine descent, this avatar, watching him materialize things in front of my face, changing the weather in front of my face, healing people on the spot. Being around Swamiji Visvayogi that I mentioned just a bit ago, that I'm able to be in proximity of, and he works with me. He raises my Kundalini energy by touching me and does this guru-student exchange. And so in these exchanges, be it with these God men on earth or higher civilizations, extraterrestrial or celestial, I've learned that there's a place in there that is so far beyond the language that there really is no one talking, but everything is nicely just laid out and everyone understands.
So these beings to you have always been positive in nature.
For me, always.
Are you aware of another faction that is not?
When I was Catholic, that was validated to me quite often, simply of the Catholic mind, the dogmatic stuff, the demons, the devils, the boogeyman, and all that stuff, you're bad, and however that would show up for me. And so this period of my life, when I was just a young boy, I had, nightmares, as we would call them, just like anybody else, waking up in cold sweats because the devil was trying to get my toes, kind of thing. And I have had some experiences recently, when I say recently, here and there still, that I'll find myself confronted with a being. And I've learned now that instead of reacting in fear and waking up in cold sweats, I just say, bro, are you for real? Did you really want to do the dance with me? And because I am at the level of consciousness where I can use my will to create light as a weapon, if you will, or light as an illumination to that which is trying to trick me. And they simply just go away and leave me alone.
Are these beings similar in look to the good celestials that you work with, or are they radically different? And would you even put them in the category of the celestials, or are these what theologic dogma would refer to as demons?
I would say they would follow the last two, definitely as in the category of demons, but also extraterrestrials, because of that which is not pro-humanity, obviously is not of this earth. This earth was created for humanity, as the abode of humanity. So that which is anti-humanity is not of this plane, or at least its influence, that's for sure.
Are the celestials aware of these other beings? Do they do battle? Do they keep separate from one another? Is one on an elevated plane, the other is in a lower plane, so they're aware of each other's existence, but they never come into contact?
Fantastic question, Dave. I would say no. The celestials are definitely aware of the lower vibrational energies, but not so much so on the flip, because, and here's one thing, most people talk about a war in heaven. There's a spiritual war. This may happen on the lower stratus where we are and maybe a couple above, but it's really not laid out that way. If we were to believe that beings of pure light are having a scuffle with something that is so unaware of what reality is, it's lost in its own self and it becomes demonic. So if we was to take a pin flashlight and walk into a huge dark room, the light simply just cuts through the darkness. So by these celestial beings simply being present in any situation, the darkness simply just dissipates. So there's really no war in heaven. I will never buy into that model ever.
Now I'll ask the question I'm sure you've been asked 1,000 times, but one that I know our listeners are wanting to know. Keith Anthony Blanchard, why you? Why did they single you out to begin this communication?
Because I wanted it. On some level, I wanted it. We all get what we want.
At the age of 9?
Oh, this was definitely pre my birth, before I was born. That's for sure.
Okay, so you believe in the soul contracts, if you will.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, this has been with me a long time.
All right.
And it's not me because I'm chosen. Everyone has choice. So we're all chosen. We get what we choose. It's just that I chose this experience for whatever reasons of growth and to be a contribution to a unified humanity.
Now, when they have had contact with you, is it always terrestrially? Is it here on planet that they deal with you, or have they taken you aboard a craft?
Early in my life, when I would find myself in the backyard, I honestly don't know the answer as if I was removed from the planet. I don't know that at all. Maybe my body was responding to the movie that was happening inside of me, and I was walking and I went outside. I don't know that. But I do know that when I have these celestial experiences, it's usually in sleep. And I lose identification of my mind and my body, and that somehow my consciousness becomes released. But on the physical earth, in the physical way, when I get to experience, again, these avatars like Satya Sai Baba, when I went to India, Swamiji, who I see often. So it's a little bit of all of it, actually. But I've never, again, and when I have these nighttime excursions, I do go aboard craft, but it's more of a consciousness of my consciousness boards the craft versus my physical body. Okay. However, 4 years ago, I was moving from one place to another. And I had a space mattress, a foam mattress. I'm not trying to be funny, space mattress. I had a space mattress, space foam. And when I was removing it, because I was going to get a new one, there was truly an outline of my body underneath the entire mattress where I would sleep every night.
Now, what do you believe caused that? Was it the radiation from being spiritually beamed aboard? How do you explain that?
I can't. It could have been just my body's energy from sleeping there for so long. It could have been radiation. It could be gamma rays, or whatever the energy exchange and flux that happens for me to go. It could have been simply me charging up, if you will, that stained these fibers. Because when I go into these experiences aboard these craft, and the people that I see when I'm there, they're very calm, and I've never really looked so hard as if to be squinting to really make sure that their ears are not as pointy as the others. I don't fall into that. I fall into that, like I said earlier, that dialogue that seems to be floating around like in a conversational ocean.
Okay. Now, the craft itself, well, let me actually take it back, because this is interesting. You talk about more like your consciousness goes aboard these craft. Isn't that fascinating? Because so many people talk about seeing themselves lifting up and floating through a wall or through a window, and then finding themselves aboard the craft itself, as though they're being pulled or beamed into it, but they can't understand how their physical being is being manipulated through hard matter. So, do you believe that whatever energetic field they're creating can bring your body through a hard surface, or is it because they're actually taking a spiritual manifestation of who Keith Anthony Blanchard is aboard the ship, as opposed to the meat bag that we're wearing?
I think it's both. I think the lower in vibration, or the lower the energy or entities or the race of that entity, they would use more of the hardware. They're more interested in the body. They're more interested in plugging in the backside. They're more interested in that. The higher you get in nature, the less there is a need to have the corporeal or the physical meat suit for them to be able to manipulate. So
I'm sorry, one second. I have to stop you, because you just made a comment I know that everybody's going to jump on me for not going back to. What do you mean plugging you in the backside?
When it comes to the lower extraterrestrials, it's somewhat famous in the media that people get probed in the backside, that they get something shoved inside of their hiney.
Well, I wanted to make sure that I heard that properly, and it wasn't. I was misunderstanding the concept. You meant something that we weren't picking up on. Has that understanding that you made this contract pre-life in the soul realm to allow this to occur, with that said, do you believe that you have been probed, but not in a forceful or against your will kind of way? And I don't mean just anal probe, but I mean overall, do you believe that they have tested you physically and utilized part of you or examined part of you like that?
I would think that would be true. Being prodded in a very different way, an extraction of information, part of my energy, my DNA, or whatever that might be. And I did have, 1998, an actual physical on the Earth experience with an alien human hybrid by the name of Nucleus 8. I was in contact and friended him for 4.5 years, where he actually called me one day. Worked through the body of a 5'1" woman. And now I want to make this very clear. When I say Nucleus 8, who is a 7-foot tall human hybrid, Gray, when he works through the body of a woman, I don't mean channeling, the word channeling whatsoever. This is not what this is. He literally superimposes himself with his will all around this person and emanates this body. I met him through a friend of mine. We were waiting to go in line to a metaphysical church. This story is quite long, so I don't know if you want to dissect it for the break. I mean, there's so much involved with my time with this.
Let's take a break here then. We'll come back and we'll hear your encounter with Nucleus 8 and what this means to your story. And we'll also backtrack for a second. As I took us off course, I'd like to know a little bit more about the craft and what it looks like, and anything else you could tell us about that. But let's take a quick break. Homecoming, an Alien Abduction. That's the name of today's show. The book is called Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. We have a link for that book in today's program guide. Make sure you order it. Our guest, Keith Anthony Blanchard, will return along with us right here on Darkness Radio. Welcome back. Happy Thanksgiving again to all of you. We appreciate you tuning in. Hey, let me remind you, tonight, not only do you get a great episode of Darkness Radio, where we're bringing you some Thanksgiving treats, but tonight on the Travel Channel, make sure you tune in for a brand new Thanksgiving episode of The Holzer Files. That's right, my TV show, The Holzer Files, is back on Travel Channel every Thursday night. Make sure that you watch it. Tonight's episode is called Edge of the Veil. And this is a big one, Tim. This is an exciting opportunity because Hans Holzer, as you know, had this lifelong obsession with the paranormal. And Rockland County, New York was the site of his first case.
Uh-huh.
Well, here it is, half a century later. And I go with the team to try to decode the region's rampant paranormal activity. Is it stemming from a revolutionary past, or is there something more sinister at play? That's tonight on the best in paranormal TV programming, The Holzer Files, Thanksgiving edition. Make sure you tune in and check that out. It is on Travel Channel, The Holzer Files. This season has been great. I hope you guys have enjoyed the first handful of episodes. Some of my favorite episodes have aired, and I can tell you this, there is more to come that is going to blow you away. And I don't say that lightly. This season was so exciting to be a part of. We captured some amazing evidence. We tried some fantastic experiments and got unbelievable results. You're going to have to tune in, check it out. There's a lot of great stuff going on this season on The Holzer Files on Travel Channel. So make sure you set your DVRs and check it out. Email me. Let me know what you think. Dave@darknessradio.com. We're back. We have a lot to unpack with our guest, Keith Anthony Blanchard. Again, his book is called Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. And we have a link up for the book. Right now, we're focused on his experiences as an alien abductee. And that sounds weird, right? Abducted sounds like it's against your will, like it's forced, but you're actually an alien experiencer, an exchange student, if you will, it seems, is maybe a better term for this, Keith. Yeah. But let's go real quickly back, and you could take us to meeting a Nucleus 8, but the craft itself, what can you describe to us about the craft and what it looks like either from the outside, inside, or both?
My only vantage point would be from the inside. They have a lot of the same amenities we would find here on Earth. I mean, they have living room type section. I was really, again, it was really never a physical thing for me. I can tell you they're very large inside, and sometimes there's such an illusion that we think the ship has to be big on the outside in order for it to be big on the inside. And there are often times when I find myself in a space, literally a space, where I had this often that is always present. There's a conscious knowing stream in my experiences that some of these crafts may look small to us when we look up, but in the interior, it's totally a different dimension, a total different way of experiencing reality.
I knew it. Time Lord technology exists. You've heard it here, folks. The Doctor Who anthology stories are real. Smaller on the outside, bigger on the inside. Now that excites me about the experiences you're having. All right, so you're aboard. Does it look normal? Is it this sterile white and silver environment that they've portrayed in movies and television programs?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. That was for futuristic effect for
Do they have like matinee wall hangings and bad tchotchkes, like bobbleheads on the wall? What exactly is it like?
It's really tough to put into words it's like grappling for an idea that's we don't have the words to paint. I do know that what really fascinated me and still fascinates me to this day is what drives the ship. And I'm not talking about necessarily the technology. I was never privy to that. But what really drives the ship? What really drives their experience? What is this all about? It's all, from my experience, it's always about the children. And these children are bouncing around, these innocent little curious and awe, wonderment kind of children, just everywhere. It's always about the children. Somehow the excitement of the children is what not only fuels the ship, take that in context, but it fuels the mission in and of itself. It's always about the children. So the children are truly I wouldn't say the commanders, they're the adults for that. But the children's are the one that is the fuel. It's the gas.
Wait a minute. So if I get abducted from my house with 11 children, I'm going to be put aboard a craft with children? Count me out. I'm done. Keith, I've no interest now. You lost me.
It's a total different feeling. It's a total different childlike experience, but I get your point.
The children, yeah, right. That's easy for you to say. The children, do they look human? Do they look alien? Do you believe that there are hybridization programs?
They're all of it. There are many human-like beings that occupy our local space, that's for sure. And there are some that are some human. There are some that are some alien. There's some that are just smack right in the middle. And especially the hybrids, the true 50-50 hybrids, they're such beautiful energies.
The Celestials seem so far advanced from us. What would the reasoning be for them to want to breed or hybridize? Are they trying to repopulate a planet? Are they in need of our DNA to strengthen something of theirs? Why do you believe that's happening? I mean, we're a pretty dumb race of hairless apes, right? I mean, we're violent, we're mean-spirited, we're warlike. These beings are advanced. Why us?
If we're speaking about Celestials, what they are getting from us is, remember we are their children, so to speak. We contain the RNA, DNA implant structure of probably between anywhere from 8 to 9, 10, 11 different races. And so what they have invested is what is happening on Earth now. Now, the other ones, the lower vibrational bad guys, if you will, it's control. They want, depending on who you hang out with, if they come get you, some of these beings will eat you and you will not return. But there are some who just want to control.
Don't just blow over that, Keith. Are you talking they will actually eat you?
Happens all the time.
Why am I so disturbed at your passive response to that? Tim, yeah, aliens eat us all the time. Happens. That's how people disappear.
Some people do disappear in that way. But this is all changing. It's been changing for so many years because the vibration of Earth is lifting so dramatically. They simply can't get in. When I say they can't get in, they are no longer in the bandwidth of their sense ability to see this plateau, this plane, this level that we're living on. Now, doesn't mean, like you said earlier when we talked about a parallel reality, that reality still exists. So there are people who are still in that place, still having those experiences. But what you, I, Tim, and many others, we're just not a part of that radio wave or that bandwidth to have such experiences. But there are people who get taken for many different reasons, many different reasons.
So have you ever seen the movie From Beyond? That's an H.P. Lovecraft story.
Can you lay out a small trailer for me?
It was a bad 80s horror movie, which makes it delightful. But they're stimulating the pineal gland. And when they stimulate it, it allows the victim, if you will, to see these other beings. And when that happens, the beings suddenly can see you. You become visible in their spectrum, and they become visible in your spectrum, and they would attack. Is that what you're saying? Is that there is this buffering taking place, keeping us from being visible to these beings? And when they see us, they're treating us like a germ that they devour and get rid of? Or are they hunting us, seeking to eradicate humans? What's that aspect?
I think both of those are very possible. When we become aware of these others, I think what's keeping us from becoming aware of any of them is fear. So now the question becomes, where is this fear coming from? Well, we can bet that it's self-induced, but we're also being influenced by those who are like, leeches sucking on our energy system, on our auric fields, our bioenergetic field. And so it takes some time for one to right or balance themselves into a space of absolute equilibrium. And when you get that equilibrium, then you're simply able to see because the pineal is now stimulated. And so now you can see. And with all clarity, you realize there was nothing to fear in the first place. And then you graduate higher and higher and higher, or more expanded into a broader reality, broader spectrum of a broader scope.
Is there ever a point where you think, yeesh, I want to tear up this contract and just go back to being normal?
That was true at the beginning of my walk, because I had to go through so many trials and tribulations to be able to navigate myself, to move peacefully in the world every day. It's default now. It's second nature for me. So in other words, I'm past those milestones. And it's not a bragging point. It's just a factual point of the matter, which is I no longer live in struggle and effort and please tear this contract up. I want out.
Yeah, I would just think that at some point I would be like, I don't know. Sometimes knowledge can be dangerous. Mm-hmm. Does it ever? And walk with me, if you would, in a minute for this. So having something this expansive available to you, does it ever make you feel insignificant? Because, we're already just a speck on a giant revolving block of dirt flying through the galaxy, zipping around the sun. That can already make you feel insignificant. But now to realize that there is all of this, does it? I just think that in some sense that might cause a mental disconnect. How do you answer to something like that?
I think it actually is a mental disconnect. I think that's the most important, delicious part of it. This insignificant feeling for me is very, very powerful. It's very important. It creates this amazing humility, which is the key that opens us up to the level of these celestials beyond these lower tiers, if you will, of hanging out with anyone from another world, people in life. But that insignificant feeling, I call it humility actually, is what allows me to connect to that which is truly significant. Because okay. I decrease what I think is me, and I melt myself away into feeling boasted by my ego, which I love my ego. I play music full time. I've been doing it for a living for many, many years. So I love all these aspects of the human dance. But I've also learned that through just being kind and all these things that we know to be is such an amazing possibility of allowing and helping one to expand into different levels of experience, conscious expansion.
I talking about meeting beings and meeting people and things like this, and we'll get into the Nucleus 8 part of your story in a second. When you've been aboard these ships and you've seen and witnessed others, have you ever met anybody from Earth that you were able to connect with later to go, Tim Dennis, I saw you. You were on the ship. You were in Anal Pod Bay 3. I mean, was there ever a moment like that for you?
No, it wasn't. I've never saw friends I have seen family. I don't know if these necessarily were a co-experiencing of being taken or being with. That's really never occurred for me. But I did have an experience many years ago with the biblical Enoch, believe it or not.
Okay, we'll get into that in a few seconds.
Sure.
So now you were starting to talk to us about Nucleus 8. If you don't mind resetting that stage for us.
Many years ago, 1997 and a half about, I was going to a metaphysical church in Memphis called the Connection Center. So we're waiting in queue, waiting for the door to open up. And one of my sister friends, a goofy girl, she's at the front of the line. I'm somewhere towards the back. And we see each other and we do that distant wave to each other. Hey, what's going on? And she bounces on over and, hey, Keith, how's it going? Meet and greet for a few minutes. And she says, Keith, do you want to meet an extraterrestrial? No, excuse me. She says, Keith, would you like to meet an alien being? And I attributed to Laura just being goofy, but I felt something in that. I said, sure. She gives me that finger and says, follow me. So I begin to walk to the front of the line. And she brings me up to the backside of a woman with this little group that she was hanging out with when I first recognized her. She brings me up to the backside of this little 5'1" woman. And I didn't know what to expect as I'm, skipping over there. A little green man's going to jump out from behind the wall, or Robin Williams. I had no idea. So on my way there, and I reached the backside of this woman, and she says, Laura, that is, Keith, meet Nucleus 8. Nucleus 8, meet Keith Blanchard. Excuse me. And the lady turns around, and you would expect a 5'1" woman's voice, which it is, to be something like this and really mousy. But boy, I tell you what, the power that came out of those vocal cords, it knocked me back. And I could see the superimposement in my spiritual eye, if you will, that this was a very large, powerful male. Nucleus 8. The first thing he said to me after we were introduced, excuse me, is, "What do you want from me?" I said, "What?" And I thought to myself, what a strange way to greet somebody. What do you want from me? He says, "You want some help with that?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "You want data." He didn't say friendship, have a coffee, eat some pizza, and have some beer. He said, "You want data." And I felt that word to be alien. It's such an alien word. You want data. And so we befriended each other over a period of about 4.5 years. Now, Nucleus 8 at that time in 1997 and a half was 4,720 years old in one incarnation. He is head of security for this quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy. He was grown, hence his name is Nucleus. He was grown to be the center, nucleus, of security for this quadrant of the Milky Way galaxy. Number 8 is his position on a board of 12. He lives 27,000 light years away from Earth on another dimension.
All right, now can you pass me the weed and let me have a hit?
Here you
this
go.
Sounds insane. So it's a woman.
It is insane.
The physical form of this little petite woman, but inhabiting this meat bag is a male energy alien. Is he there all the time, or does he sublet? And I don't mean that dismissively, but I don't know. You said it wasn't channeling, but what is he there all the time? This is just because it sounds like third rock from the sun, right? I mean, you've got that beautiful statuesque woman who's very masculine and was the security for this deal. Detail on her planet, and she's this masculine, strong being is inhabiting this feminine body. What can you tell us about who lives there all the time?
I steered us away from the word channeling on purpose. It is a channeling, but there's more happening there than someone just sitting there closing their eyes and becoming a channel for spirit or some Pleiadian living on another planet. So after Nucleus 8 and I, and the woman, Star 1, Marjorie, Rex Hare, 40-year clinical psychologist, so he knows what human behavior is. The way they met is the agreement between Star 1 and Nucleus 8 and his team or civilization, whatever the contract is, or their shared experiences. When she was a young girl, she was violated by, let's just use the word abused by her parents, and she just had a lot of rough stuff. And they, quote, saved her. And the agreement was when she got older, Nucleus was going to work through her. So that was like a flash of lightning in the sky because, he's lived to be 4,720 years old so far. So when she grew up, it all began to happen. But before she met Rex, Dr. Rex Hare, anyone can find Dr. Rex Hare with an E after the word hair. Dr. Rex Hare. Look for his book called Heroic Nucleus 8. There's probably 3 or 4 of them that are free. So she went to Dr. Rex Hare for counseling because of her problems from her past. Dr. Rex Hare puts in a very light hypnosis. And boy, as soon as he did, the first thing to pop out was a fairy by the name of Perithnia and says, if you think you're going to come in here and monkey with her mind like people of her past, I will stop you myself. So this began an ongoing, unfolding thing where it was fairies and then it was shamans and then it was extraterrestrials, archangels, so forth and so on. And then finally Nucleus 8 stepped in. And so after a long period of working with Marjorie, Dr. Rex Hare that is, they actually got married. And that's when I began to hang out with these 3, and befriending Nucleus, he began to do some of the most phenomenal things through me, in front of me, while I'm actually in physical waking night states of consciousness.
Can you define what that means? What type of things would Nucleus 8 do?
Well, after hanging out with these 2 for a while, Dr. Rex Hare said, Keith, I'd like to come to you sometime to put you under light hypnosis so you can see if there's anything bothering you about your past that you want to clear up. I said, sure. So he and Marjorie came over, and I was conscious for the whole thing. I didn't fall asleep. No one was programming me, my mind, none of that. Keith, can we go back to this aspect of your life kind of thing? Seems clear. Next subject. So after this was all over, Dr. X Hare says, Keith, I'm about to bring you out. 3, 2, and all of a sudden, Nucleus steps in and says, hey, buddy. I said, Nucleus, what's going on? Now, keep in mind, at this stage, I was not really sure I was going to allow myself to just fall into this and accept it. I wasn't resistant. I just wasn't really sure if this was real and really happening. And so he says, hey, bro. I said, what's up, Nucleus? He says, you remember that journey you and I have been talking about for a long time that I promised you? I said, yes. He says, you ready? And I said, sure. He says, give me your hand. So I give him my hand, and he puts his hand in mine, and he begins to pull on my hand and my arm outward as if he would grab your shirt and just pull it outward like a tug on your shirt. And everything I know at that time, knew as myself, began to leave my body through the tug of my arm and got out about, I would say about 5 feet or so. And some part of me was holding on for dear life. And so he lets go. And I come back to my body in the room, and he says, what's the matter? I said, I don't know. I said, I'm trying to figure out what or what not to do to allow this to happen. He said, that's your problem right there. You're trying too hard. Let go, Keith. Let's do this again. And so he begins to pull on my arm again. And I get out. I got a little better at it, about 15 to 20 feet. And I let go. He lets go, and I come back, and he goes, Keith, some part of you is not allowing this experience to happen. I cannot, nor will I ever violate your free will. Tell me what it is you saw while you were outside of your body. I was on that or around that space station, 23,000 light years away in another dimension. I saw his ship. It's very sleek, like you might see a cop car, needing the ability for speed because he and his team roam the galaxy, policing it, removing fear and troublemakers. And so I saw the outside of the ship. And so as I walk into the ship, the first thought that popped into my head is, where are all the chairs? All the chairs begin to come out of the wall. And as soon as I was done with the thought, they returned right back into the wall. And so this is one of the experiences I've had with Heroic Nucleus 8 over a course of 4 years. And they just get more broader and more expanded and more deep and more weird.
More weird?
Right.
And please understand, I'm not laughing at you. It's just, it's like so much to take in.
I get it.
And understand. Now, at points, listen, I've got kids, right? Kids will make you feel like the dumbest being on the planet. They will make you feel like logic makes no sense and make you question your own sanity. Do you ever have those moments in what you're dealing with that you're like, I gotta be high. Maybe I'm inhaling natural gas fumes or something. Do you ever just question your own sanity regarding the experiences that you're having?
I don't. I know that something, be it nucleusate or celestial or anything, I don't fall into denial. I admit to myself something is happening. I may not know what that something is, and I may not be able even to describe it to myself. Like I said earlier, that's when I allow myself to fall into the fire so I can get to the language that is actually trying to reveal itself to me, to tell me what it is. But no, not for me. I'm a willing participant, really.
Okay. But you see these things. Listen, I saw a craft in the sky. I physically saw this.
Yeah.
I saw it. It looked like a living creature swimming through the sky. And when I had the explanation of what it was, this half biologic craft that allows it to get in between dimensions, right? I hear this and it freezes my brain. I'm like, what did you just explain? But it makes complete and utter sense with what I just saw. But the rationale of trying to process that just locks my brain up. Obviously, I was there for a reason. I saw what I was supposed to see at that moment, but it's like it does not compute. I cannot process. And this is 14 years later. I still have a hard time processing what I experienced. You are getting sips from a fire hose all the time. How did I understand you made this soul contract before coming here, but still it seems like there's only so much the human consciousness can take, the human brain can take before it just fries out. And you're getting so much information, so much download, so much high strangeness. And you know what really comforts me is you don't sound like you're nuts as you're talking about this.
Oh, I am.
you don't have that air of like like your brain is scattered or fractured. It sounds very just like you're telling me about going down to Floyd's barbershop and getting a cut with Andy and Barney and having a conversation as you discuss what is occurring between you and these beings. I just can't fathom how you're able to just deal with this, or is that a coping method?
What makes this so hard for many people to believe, at least this story, Dr. Rex Hare's story, is it's so real. Everything that everyone wants to be true somehow scares the living bejesus out of them. They, even when it's brought into their experience, but wanting it, believing it, inviting it, deserving it is what will bring it into full view. So you can actually experience where I think humanity is headed in the first place. We get to be in the front car.
Now, what if we have listeners right now, Keith, that want this mind expanding experience to see and connect with this alien culture? How do we do it safely so that we don't end up being eaten by an alien and in introducing the wrong ones? And B, how do we know that we're not dealing with some knucklehead who thinks she's really an alien but isn't? I mean, how do we differentiate that as though those of us on a lower end of the spectrum here of this journey? You're much further along and can sense and see and experience these things, but many of us want that. But logic gets in the way, or our understanding of logic. What do we do to expand and allow these things in?
Nothing happens until a person wants the experience. Absolutely nothing will ever happen. You have to want it like you want your next breath. So what are the precautions? Well, ask yourself, am I a joyful, happy human being? Because if whatever you feel about yourself as a description is the arena you will be playing in, therefore attracting. Now, I'm not saying that because of your wanting and your willing and your intention to have an experience that something higher cannot slip in. Well, absolutely it can. And this is part of the growing process. There are really no precautions. Use your feeling base as your barometer. It's always your measurement stick. Do your best to find when you are submersed in fear, and don't judge yourself for it. Just realize you're in fear. Do something about it. Elevate to another level. But it can happen in a moment's notice. It can take many, many years. But because of that contract, I'm fortunate, if you will, to have had this happen. This didn't come easy. I was in a relationship for 10 years. It went belly up, and I was in a dark night of the soul, and it put me on my knees. I felt insignificant. But I think, in fact, I know, in my very first asking, when I got on my knees and said, God, I need you. And I said this every day for 3 weeks. And I knew in hindsight that it wasn't, well, after 3 weeks, well, God said, well, I'm convinced. I think he's serious. Let me go pay him a visit. No, it was in my first asking. I was so humble, passionate, sincere, and vulnerable. And that just seemed to crack the door open. So what I'm offering for anyone who is interested in having such conscious level experiences is use your passion, your fire, to want it, to attract it. In other words, to prove, if you will. Use your sincerity, because your sincerity is that part of you that says, I really mean it, kind of energy. I'm sincere about this.
Are you substituting sincerity for the word intention in this case? Setting your intention to have these experiences?
Yeah, intention's a fantastic word. But I think sincerity creates a tone, a timbre, a vibration of that intention. This is how want it to
be
happen.
Honest, though, Keith. My sincerity is I would like to commune with the aliens. I don't want to use the word abducted. That again, to me, gives me negative connotations. I'd like to commune with them. I'm sincere about that, but I got to be 100% human and honest and say, as much as I want that to happen, there's that trigger of fear in the back of my brain going, oh, F this. No way, dude. What are you, nuts? But the sincerity of wanting the experience is real. How do we get past that barrier of fear? Which I'm sure, this has got to be touching on what you work on in the book, Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge of the Soul. How do we get past fear to give us more of this enlightenment, to allow us to a greater height and a deeper connection to these celestial beings, angelic beings, alien beings, whatever we want to call them?
Whatever the opportunity is in life on any level, in order for it to happen, you have to decide to make it happen. So now we're confronted with fear. You have to toss that fear yourself into the fire. What this really boils down to, we can look at fear in many different ways. But for most people, it boils down to dying. I'm scared to death is a famous way of saying it. I'm scared to death. People have a fear of dying. And I don't mean necessarily physically. We identify with the mind so much, we're not really wanting it to die. But that's the first thing that needs to happen. So we have to jump into the fire. So how do we move through the fear so we can begin to have these experiences that we're talking about? You have to die. You have to be willing to step into an arena, knowing that you will be okay, that you will find your way through the experience and everything. But until then, nothing will happen. You have to be willing to walk into your fear scenario. Some people might have a fear of whatever it is. Well, in order to get to cross that bridge to the soul, there, it's, what do you call it? The gauntlet. You have to go through the gauntlet. You have to go. It's a trial by fire.
Is this something for everyone? Do you think we are all needing to get this level of elevation, or are there some that should just not do this, not dabble, not open up?
It's there for everyone, but I absolutely agree. It's, if you're not ready, you're not ready. If you live your life in fear, if you have anxiety every so often, it's not for you, because you still have some growing to do. Now, growth can happen in a flash. It can happen just like that, or it can happen over a period of years. The universe is not in a hurry. It's not in a hurry. It has no concern about taking offense to anything you say or do or anything like that. It knows it's eternal. It's not in a hurry. So it's for those who choose to be chosen, for those who choose to want to pick up their gait as they step forward in life. And forward doesn't mean, having a nice car and a nice house. Well, having a nice consciousness is pretty freaking amazing, let me tell you.
What do you believe is the amount of truth to all of the claims of alien abductions that are taking place? And I know it's not as prevalent as it seems because we're a paranormal show, so obviously it sounds more prevalent because that's who we speak to. But what's really going on here, and how much of it do you believe is real?
For a lot of people, it's real. Whether other people don't believe it or not is irrelevant, because for them, for whatever reasons, they're having a real experience. Now, whether it's something that the mind or the unconscious or the psychotic mind might be concocting, that's one thing. But it does not make it any less real for a psychotic person or someone who's schizophrenic. That's another show entirely. Because schizophrenia, who's to say that what they're experiencing is not of a higher level? It may be a little wobbly in front of our eyes and how it reveals itself. And then, of course, you got people who are walking in the fields with 2x4s and an eye hook on a hat, and they're mashing the grass. And I get all that, but it frees me inside to realize that everything is possible. In fact, it's impossible for anything to be impossible. And so I just see everything as a beautiful possibility unfolding. But when it comes to the extraterrestrial, I actually, I'm not going to mention the name. I decided to pull out of the famous UFO movement. I love the dark stuff. I love digging in rabbit holes. But it got a little bit too unbalanced for me. It became all about certain things and not about really the expansion. Like, for example, many people are in the UFO movement. They're interested in the hardware craft. What does this thing look like? Where is it from? But not many people are truly interested in the pilots.
Right.
So it's always the hardware craft that seems to get the front seat more so than the actual people who are moving the machine around the skies.
I wonder if that's because the craft machinery, that's something we can understand. Engineering, it's a science. It's trying to break down what could possibly get us here. Once we believe that this is a craft that could get here, then we can start to believe what's inside the craft.
Yeah, it's first step, baby steps.
Yeah, so I think that's more the angle people take. I could be wrong. It doesn't happen often. Tim will attest to that, but I could be wrong. Being facetious, of course. Very strange. These races, if they come to you and they want to make communication, how do you know that you're getting good people, that you're not about to broker a deal with the devil?
Simply by the way I feel while it's happening, and also the way I feel when I wake up in the morning. When I go into these hyper-conscious states, it's sort of like putting reading glasses on when you can't read the page that's right in front of you, and all of a sudden you get this Dollar Tree pair of glasses and you put them on. It just opens up and you can see movement. And when I say movement, though there are things flitting and moving about hither and thither, you can see. It's a different way of seeing. You know, because when I know that I'm not having a good experience because one of those Catholic dogmatic demons is trying to convince me and tempt me, I absolutely know. So and that's why I'm at the state of awareness. I can say, you might want to go mess with someone else because I'm about to blast you with light. Or I grab them around their neck and give them a kiss on the cheek, and they want no part of that. And for me, it's simply a knowing. I don't presume when I go in there. I just find myself relaxed, and I really don't have those experiences anymore. So,
all right. Now, this brings us to your book and all that you've learned, all the things that you've experienced. Why put it together in this way? What did you hope people, listeners, readers will take away from what you had to share?
Homecoming: Crossing the Bridge to the Soul is about you. the person, whoever you are, the plural word of sense of the word you. It's about you wanting something beyond our own understanding. And that wanting, what is that wanting we are wanting? It's you. You want yourself. It's really what we're all wanting. When we begin this path, one has to realize that there are times coming for you. It's inevitable that you are going to die. What you know as you is going to perish. Now, what will hasten the soul's arrival is the willingness to do that. Hello, COVID-19. The old world is dead. It's never coming back, sadly. My condolences for anyone who's still holding on to a dead world for dear life. It's never coming back. And so, even though Homecoming does not talk about this situation, Homecoming does talk about this situation in regards to, this was all prophetic information that came to me in 1996, and it's all happening now at the beginning of the new millennium. This is all contained within this book. This book is actually a compilation of the divine principle and my journey to India to see Satya Sai Baba. But what's more important, or equally important, is not only that it's two books in one. It shows the unfoldment process of the guy next door, me, you, John Doe, whoever you are. We're all the same. I'm just this guy next door. And it shows my humble, desiring unfoldment, which I think is a powerful teaching tool in and of itself that brought me from the beginning of the walk to where I am now as a spiritual teacher.
For people that hear this and just wonder if this is just like the beginning of some new cult, some new way of life, how do you cross that it's not just the new Jesus, it's not just a new idea to cash in, take advantage, manipulate the masses? And I know, well, I'll shut up and let you answer that one.
It is a cult. It's a culture. It's a cult. It's the cult of you. And there are many people who are joining, if you will, since we're playing with the word cult, there are many people joining this cult, and it's the cult of you. And collectively, everyone is realizing that it's about them. It's always been about you. Even in your selflessness, you are still a selfish creature, because in one's selflessness, they realize that there's a feeling, there's a charge to be selfless. So it makes it selfish again. So it's taking back who you are, opening yourself up to the possibility, the reality of what you are at your essence. And when you begin to let this stuff out, things begin to happen in an amazing way. So we begin to expand our tribe of people who are wanting the same thing I am wanting, you are wanting. We are all wanting to return home. That's the homecoming, going back to the soul where we all are conscious and connected, and there is no separation. Now, the gig about the earth is we are embodiments of that very intention that was launched beyond time, if you will, onto this plateau, so we can become the personification of that very truth, the highest truth. Jesus was the personification of that. Buddha was the personification of that, so forth and so on. This is actually unfolding right here and right now. This is revelation full on. It's just full on. And so we have an opportunity to use the momentum of the window that is open to move through and be in the soul. And what's coming down the pike in the next couple months is going to be really, really weird. And so we got a few more years, probably about 7 years of the dog after it shook the fleas off, settling in and lying in its bed very comfortably and taking a nap. Because right now the world has been shaken. The snow globe has been shaken. And it's going to take someone who finds himself in a space of balance to navigate. Can you give us an insight as to what we should expect so that we can revisit this 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, and see where things fell? Expect that it's not going to unfold the way that anyone can possibly imagine. Don't expect anything. That should be expected. Don't expect anything to happen like you think it should, would, or could, because in so doing, you will not be prepared nor able to balance yourself, because you will be caught up in the riddle. You'll be caught up in the conundrum, in the whirlpool, or the cesspool, if you will, of the world spinning out of control. So the best thing you can do is sit back, let it happen, and just enjoy the movie. Get you some popcorn and leave it alone. When you start fighting with the current of the world, it will hit you back. What happens in a fight? Even if you're trying to break up a fight, even if you are anti-racist, anti-terrorist, anti-this, when you submerge yourself and stand up for something and you have this fighting spirit about you, you can get slugged. So it doesn't mean a removal of your compassion. It actually puts the compassion on oneself, so one has the awareness to be able to engage, to be of the greatest influence. Because if we all just go in there slugging it out, nothing happens except more trouble.
I'd love to understand more of this and open, and I guess that's why the book is there, so people can open their minds to this possibility, to this realm. And if you're a person on a journey longing for a destination, longing to make sense, I've often thought, as many around the world have done, to investigate all the different theories of theology, belief systems, and possibilities. What resonates with you? What might start your rapture? Much like our guest, when in the 90s watching Discovery Channel, he connected with something inside himself that opened this portal, that opened these memories and allowed him to find the connection that has always been there. So examine these concepts. Listen, folks, I'm like you to the point where I'm fascinated by this. There are aspects of this story that I find utterly amazing. There are some that I find utterly unbelievable. It doesn't mean that I throw the baby out with the bathwater. There are unbelievable aspects to life, daily life, things that happen that make no sense. We can't just discard it because it makes no sense to our current understanding of what life is. It's easy to dismiss guests that talk about channeled alien beings in a female body that, and a lot of the different strange aspects of this story. But this show has always been branded on the fact of what if, and examining these concepts a little more deeply. I mention this because I know Tim and I, talking behind the scenes during this interview, can hear the typewritten emails of "this guy's nuts" or "wow, this is fascinating." I can sense what's coming, and from you, the listener. And I love hearing from you. I love to see why you believe the things you believe or won't believe other aspects. And like you, part of this journey today, I'm fully on board. Fully am excited and enraptured by it. The other part leaves me scratching my head going, well, that just sounds nuts. But it only sounds nuts because I have nothing in my own life to measure it against. And all of us are fascinated by the paranormal, the supernatural, the possibilities, because it shows that we don't have to be limited in our scope of thought or beliefs, that we can be open to different ideologies, different concepts, and examine them from different angles. Are they all reflections and madhouse mirror reflections of one another, just depending on who the viewer is and what they perceive it to be? That could be. But it's fascinating to dig in and hear from the people that believe these things to be true. And I'm curious, after this episode, what you guys think. Did this resonate with you? And I've got to know, Keith, and please understand, I mean no disrespect to anything I've said to you or
Sure.
just said. It is just so out there.
Yeah.
Right? But why do we draw the line, right? That's what Tim and I will laugh about. We'll talk about ghosts and demons. Oh, yeah, we believe in that. We believe that there are aliens and life on other planets. I don't know that I necessarily believe they're visiting here, but then there are too many abductees that have unbelievable stories that hold the testament of time. So, there's all of these different concepts, but it's where is that line? What is the delineation of what we will and will not accept as reality? And then what we need to do is examine the concept of why is that the line for us? What about it makes us uncomfortable or makes us want to stop examining that concept? And that's what I was asking you. Does it ever make you feel like you're losing touch with maybe humanity, reality, And that doesn't mean I think you're nuts or that I'm wondering if you've lost your mind, but I'm just wondering, does it ever leave you in a state of trying to straddle these two realms of what we've been taught to believe logically and against the yardstick of what most people accept as normal? Is it hard to straddle those two planes of what you know and what we're expected to know and understand and believe?
Well, first of all, magic will only happen outside of the box. Many people want to believe in something, and when it begins to present itself, they automatically default back to, I don't know if this is easy to believe. Again, it's not hard for me to straddle. It was a growing process. It was an expanding process. Still is, and I'm expanding into greater possibilities. But if a question would come up about whether this is real, it's very real for me. It happened many years, and by the way, I would love to send you and Tim some dialogue between Nucleus 8 and I a little later today. My whole life is I move for the sake of humanity. I have my fun. I have Keith time. But I move for the sake of humanity. Every morning I wake up, I am sit in this office chair in front of a 50-inch TV screen with my computer, and I do my work all day long. And the only income I supply myself for myself is my full-time musicianship and other support by donate links and so forth. But being in touch with these avatars, if you will, these holy men from India, I know exactly why I'm here. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly the result that's going to happen. And so I find that the more I move for humanity, the more I receive for myself as a reward on the inside, which is sort of like that spaceship. I might be a small little guy, but the room of the space inside is very well expanded.
For people that are on the fence and want to know more, how do they reach out to you? How do they come into contact with a Nucleus 8 or someone that can teach them and lead them?
You can contact me at keithanthonyblanchard.com, centeroflightradio.com, or you can find me on YouTube, Center of Light Radio, Facebook, Keith Anthony Blanchard, Center of Light Radio. These are my two brands. Also, for those who are interested to delve into this rabbit hole a little more seriously, get on Google or Amazon and look up Heroic Nucleus 8. Then you will learn of the 15-year experience Dr. Rex Hare had with Nucleus 8, who is no longer married to Marjorie. They had divorced, a loving relationship still. And of all things, she now lives in Egypt. But you can find this on Amazon, Heroic Nucleus 8. And if you dare, anyone.
But that's such a human concept. Do you mind if I stop you there? Divorce is such a human concept. If this is such an enlightened being and these two people are of the light and spirituality, why did they get married to begin with? And B, why divorce? What would cause something like that? That seems very human. And I think what would cause people to question the validity of these claims to begin with.
Yes, understood. Well, if you're a conscious being, which these two, Dr. X Hare and Marjorie are, they just realize that their time is full. It's come to a place where there's other growth to be had. And civilly and lovingly, they shook hands and life just changes. One of the only things that will never change in the universe is change itself. And so they just realize that their journey together has come to fruition and it's in its fullness.
Boy, I wish I could have used that when I got divorced 2 times. Well, that sounded horrible. I mean, it sounded like I'm looking towards the third one. But I only ask that because, again, I know our listeners are thinking people and they're going to wonder, hey, wait a minute. So this enlightened being got a divorce? Which could be a sign of enlightenment right then and there.
Totally.
All right. What else would you like to leave our listeners with before we bid you a fond adieu on this Thanksgiving evening?
Get out of the fight. The world's going to get really noisy. You step into that world, if you're not conscious, it will whip you upside the head. Be good to yourself. Turn inward. When you do so, you will move upward, you will move forward and toward something. That's something that you are looking for. Looks like you when you look in the mirror. There is no other path. There are many paths that lead to the path. But when you find yourself on that bridge at last, you will be able to see very, very clearly. And when you have such clarity, as you negotiate your crossing that ravine, that bridge, things get really easy really, really quick because there's no more fighting. And suddenly through the silence, the new world appears, just like these experiences that anyone has with extraterrestrials or celestials. It requires a great degree of silence. And so when we live in silence, the new world appears. The new world that we're looking for is not about seeing. It's not something out here we're looking for. That world is dead. The new world, the kingdom spoken about in Scripture, is simply about looking within yourself. You might not like what you see when you first do that, but you must be diligent. And if you need me, I'm the guy next door and would love to help you and support you in the expansion of your greatest possibility.
Very cool. Keith Anthony Blanchard, the book Homecoming, Crossing the Bridge to the Soul. We have a link up for that on today's program. Make sure that you get the book, rate and review the book. And tonight, brand new episode of the Holzer Files on the Travel Channel. Make sure you tune in and check that out. As always, it's a pleasure to be here with you. Tim, I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for our listeners and the opportunity to open the minds of listeners around the world. What have you got for our listeners on this Thanksgiving night?
Well, I'm thankful for you as well. I'm thankful for the show, and I'm thankful for the ability to continue to entertain and educate all of our listeners as well, and to be able to live free in our country and be able to do what we do.
Amen, my brother. We will be back next week with more of the best in paranormal talk radio and true crime talk radio right here on our home Stitcher Premium. I'm Dave. That's Tim. This is Darkness Radio.